truth is that Nigeria is dead. We are only pretending about it. Good enough, Tinubu before now was one of the strong advocates of restructuring. But what does restructuring mean? It simply means reduction of the powers at the center. If you don't reduce the powers at the center and send it a little bit to the regions for them to manage, you're wasting time with restructuring. This attempt at amending or altering the Constitution is the 6th attempt. When we were in the House of Reps, we didn't have the privilege of doing one. I was in 2.3 to 2.7 set. But ever since, we have had 5 attempts. And it will become a 4-yearly ritual unless we do something dramatic with this one. There is this impression that is being created as if there are states that are not rich. Every state in Nigeria is rich. Mention the state and I'll tell you how rich they are. There is this assumption that we must all depend on oil. So many states don't need the oil from the Niger Delta. There are states that don't have oil, but they have so much gas. And they are not even tapping into their gas. Several others have different minerals in their area. It is high time we let every state know that they are rich. Even there are people who are more brilliant than the others. They don't even need any mineral. They will still survive. So every state in Nigeria is rich. I will share a little experience I had with Fashola when he was governor. We went to him. We had a meeting. He told us how he had prepared a paper forwarding to Yaradua on the responsibilities that have been put on the exclusive legislative list of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And he said, Mr. President, you can't do this all. Cut out most of this and return them back to the regions. For example, the federal government is still involved in the ownership of secondary school. What is the business of federal government owning a federal government college? If not to have selected schools that they will fund, which they will put for selected individuals in Nigeria. Everything about ownership of secondary schools should revert to the regions. Federal government has no business in it. So the big question we must ask ourselves is, will Tinubu be prepared to allow for a reduction of his power at the center and allow for a good amount of it to go to the federating units? That is one. If he doesn't, he will leave power and he will start crying like all the other people who have left power and are crying today. It doesn't matter how much money you steal. When you leave office, that your money will reduce to nothing. You'll find out that you're struggling. Many of the people who left as governors can't even give you 50, they can't even find 50 million for themselves. So let us take advantage of this situation once for all and begin to move the country forward. Because presently this National Assembly has already started restructuring without knowing that what they are doing is restructuring. They have passed Southeast Development Commission, Southwest Development Commission, North Central Development Commission, Northeast Development Commission. That is restructuring in a very cosmetic way. How can you be creating commission for all the regions when you are pretending to be running a government at the center? You can't run it from the center.
What are we really driving at? We've had this debate around the Constitution. We've had the big debates around the conferences, the national conferences. I was part of one of them. The last one was in 2014. We've produced several conference reports. We in civil society have done alternative constitutions. We participated in the Nikki Toby 1999 process and many more. Question this raises for me, so what is Chinda trying to say? Obviously he's trying to say there's a failure of governance. I mean, I'm not using his exact words, but that's it. You don't want to change something that's working. You only change something that has failed. And why is government failing? Will the presidential or the parliamentary solve the core of the question, which is largely a problem of elite capture? Complete, total, whether we talk about the economy, whether we talk about security, whether we talk about the political class and political parties, whether we talk about the judiciary and INEC, a total capture by a certain kind of elite class. And my question, therefore, is, do these systems necessarily change the character of this political elite? So I am asking that we all get inspired by what the women are saying. We've been excluded for so long, so we understand what it is like to be excluded. If you are feeling the exclusion now, welcome to our club. We've been there for a long time, and we want you to feel the pinch. But the real story behind all of this, and it's something I have started preoccupying myself with in the last couple of weeks, and I invite you to do so. In 2050, it is projected that there will be 400 and something million Nigerians, most of which will be below the age of 19. It is also projected that as at today, 8% or more of that 200 inflated, if I agree with you, sir, inflated or disagree with you, numbers are below the age of 4, which means that in 2050, there'll be about 29. What does this debate mean to them? What? They'll be probably crossing the Sahara Desert to get to Europe? Or many of them who are already in Europe will be thinking of coming back to drive all of us out if we are still alive? And the many other realities of our lives. So the debate today is not shift me from A to B or make this to happen. It's about that Nigeria of the future. And that Nigeria of the future must be inspired by inclusions. Inclusions. It has to be inspired by inclusions. And the reason I speak this way, I'm first and foremost a woman and an activist for women's rights. Those inclusions of gender and the exclusions of gender cannot be a part of is not a part of the conversation. It remains on the table. I'm furthermore a micro minority. One that in a short term, my language may be lost, my identity may be gone in the context of this country. What do these systems mean? I think at the bottom of it all is that these identity questions will continue to define us as Nigerians. The political systems that we bring together must be one that recognizes these identities. I was asking the military officials, for example, today, what are they doing about transgenders and the many other forms of gender classifications? How are they addressing it? It's not just about bringing in women. Diversity is beginning to become very complex in itself. So my last point to you all is that if what we are advocating does not build on inclusions, whether they be of geography, religion, identities of all kinds, including, of course, of the disadvantaged and the hungry right now, the ones that are hungry on the streets of Nigeria, who are making it impossible. We are making it impossible for them to live a respectful life. Those inclusions must be at the core. And any system of government that does not recognize and inspire the inclusions of Nigerians, away from what Oxfam has told us for many years about inequality in Nigeria and just the numbers that are totally unbelievable. How just a few people have the wealth of more than 80 to 90% of the population. This is something that needs to change. These shifts are major shifts that must take place. So this discussion is not just about a system of government. It's not just about political interest and political identification with where we go and where we do not go. It is about people.
Tinubu Afenifere, that is based in Akure. In the executive, we are 11. 9 of us are intact. Only 2 renegades are going to Akure for clarification. Afenifere is, I could say, the father of the restructuring process because we have been saying it for a long time. And we have so many documents. And I've shared some of them. In fact, the final position we have now, we have a document, 51 pages, that says what we mean by restructuring. And I will share it. But the bottom line is that we have no process. We are seeing a goal, but we have not defined a process, milestones, timelines. That's what is missing. We agree that the house is rotting. It needs to be pulled down. I would design an alternative, a model, which you can now sell. The political class, their teeth is dug into the 1 million barrels of crude that they are sharing every time. It's the toy that they are playing with. Tinubu is somebody, typically, once you get to that 1 billion barrels of oil per day, you lose all composition. They are just their appointments to share. So we have to confront them. In this room, we are converted. I don't say any dissenting opinion. But we must have now, there are simple things that we need to do. Luckily for us, Decree 24 of 1999 is one page. The annex to it is the Constitution that we are talking about. Can we agree to design an alternative to that Constitution with all the provisos, with all the stipulations that we think is the ideal? A body like Eminent Elders Forum, Afenefere, the Johanese, Pandef, we all agree. We have a forum where we meet. No, not the Elders Forum. I must tell you the truth. They were invited to that body initially, but they insisted that the Middle Belt cannot stand on its own, that they must be subsumed, and the concern was that no, Middle Belt should stand on its own. So the Northern group walked out. So they are not part of the Southern Middle Belt Leadership Forum. It's only the 4 zones, excluding the 2 Northeast and Northwest, because they said that we do not recognize Middle Belt Forum, and we feel Middle Belt Forum should be recognized. That's the position. I'm just giving you the practical situations. So if all these bodies can agree from this point, this is the model that we want Nigeria to be like. Then we have a big task to sell that model that we have agreed consensus upon. And what are we talking about? 3 things: parliamentary, presidential governance, state/regional constitution. Every region must have its own constitution, not one unitary one that we are all tackling. The 3rd thing is to rework the list of functions. If you're able to do these 3, the government has changed totally. Yeah, this exclusive list, whatever. Those 3 things, once you change it in the new draft that we are going to propose, the next is now to sell it. The National Assembly now, they are not very serious. I must say it. We believe that because they have 1 billion naira to share to use every time, and they want 2 years. What you can do in the next 3 months, they want 2 years to do what? We have the draft that can be discussed today, and within 3 months agree on it. How to implement 3-4 years phased implementation plan. This is what we need. If you're able to push them now to do something within the next 3 to 6 months, look, we have only 1 year. Next year, big money will come for political elections. They will not do it to anybody again. If you don't get anything done this year, by next year, see the money they are spending in those states now for governorship election. The Labour Party bought 35 vehicles for all people to campaign. How much is one vehicle? If one vehicle is 10 million, that's 350 million straight away, just for campaign, governorship election, for primary. So if you get next year, 2027 in the horizon, then after the position that we have lost momentum again. That's just the truth. So we are settled parliamentary system. We are settled that each region must have its own constitution. Even if it states, we clarified it in SBLF. In the US, you have Delaware, it's a small state. You have Texas, and you have California. So if Akwa Ibom want to be a region, let it be. Why not? Let it be if they can sustain themselves. Western region is not a threat to Akwa Ibom region, if that's where it's going to be. We already settled in that discussion that don't be afraid of Western region, very big, Yorubas. The Igbos, very big. Anyone that can sustain itself without sharing. If I made the point to the governor of Osun State last 3 weeks, it's embarrassing for Yorubas to be coming to Abuja to be sharing money from Niger Delta. It's shameful. Very, very shy. I told him he was sitting down, governor for Osun State. If you don't get money from Abuja now, we are bankrupt in Yoruba land. That's what it is. I told him point blank in a meeting. So why must Yoruba be coming to Abuja to be sharing money belonging to Niger Delta? We are castrated. We should wake up. Whatever we consume, we should produce it. That's the bottom line.
And it's very unfortunate, regrettable, that 64 years after independence, we are still talking about a GDP per capita of less than 2,500. What has been projected even up to 2026 is still less than $3,000 dollars per capita. You also have a country in which the structure, the productive sectors of the economy are still struggling. Talking about agriculture and manufacturing many years after independence. Inequality is also high as measured by the Gini coefficient. Now when you look at all this, now the question is, does it have anything to do with the system of government we are practicing here in Nigeria? Any correlation with the presidential system of government? I was looking at a study done by, trying to get evidence. A study done by two professors of economics in the US, McManus and Osman. Yes, the study was done in 2019, and what did they do? By way of scope, they looked at 119 countries, practicing either parliamentary system or presidential system. 119 over a period of 65 years, between 1950 and 2015. Okay, so, and what did they find in their study? Now, they found that countries that were, running the parliamentary system produced better economic outcomes. Okay, on the average, they looked at growth, for example. GDP growth was 1.6 times better than those doing presidential. Inflation was 6 percentage points lower than those also practicing presidential. And in terms of even inequality, they said it was 20% lower for the countries practicing the parliamentary system of governance. So if you look at it, the economic indicators seem to favor countries practicing parliamentary system. And a good example is even the Singapore Vice Marshal mentioned. We often compare, draw comparisons. Singapore has made tremendous progress, but Singapore is not practicing a presidential system of governance. Singapore is under the parliamentary system. Now, having said that, it's also important to recognize that even if we are going to make a shift, it's not going to be an event, it's not going to be a 100-meter dash, something that will take time to consider. But in the meantime, it's important we also begin to consider the low-hanging fruits. Part of these low-hanging fruits, okay, will revolve around some of the things we're also mentioning here. The president has just, I understand, signed there are things they can use the executive order, to do. The state police is one. The issue of even the revenue allocation formula. We talk about fiscal federalism. Some will tell you what we are doing is not fiscal federalism, it's more of administrative federalism. A situation in which the federal government will take 52.68%. States are taking just 26.72%. Local governments 20.6%. If you look at that disproportion, again, it doesn't favor the subnationals, and that's why today there's no local economy, just as Amadi has said, no local economy, in Nigeria. That's because the subnationals are weak, the local governments are weak. Even the money that is meant to go to local governments are also, don't eventually get to them. So I am submitting that if you have done something continuously for a long time and it keeps producing the same result, there's no harm in also trying to, check the alternatives, especially when there is evidence suggests that those alternatives have produced superior economic reforms. But in the meantime, what do? We try to take advantage of, let's implement at least the low-hanging ones, to ensure that ultimately the purpose of governance, just as the last speaker also said, it's not about whether a cat is black or white. Ultimately, in the Constitution, what is there? Purpose of governance is to ensure security and also ensure the welfare of the citizens.